it just changed and altered itself in different forms. I was always afraid of weather. Living in Florida all my life, you grow up knowing about hurricanes and evacuation plans. So I was always aware of the Weather Channel. You can change, everybody. That is my good look. Don't do that to me. Okay, but when I was 17, I was being a rebellious teen and decided I would take off to Atlanta to pick up a friend of mine from the airport. Against my parents' wishes, I went ahead anyway. But the reports were calling for rainy weather, and on a section of I-65, I learned just how bad. A semi-truck ran me and my friends off the road, and we hydroplaned onto a drainage scrape in the middle of, southbound and northbound. I got out of the car and realized that drainage scrape had saved our lives. But little did I know, I left that day with a more paralyzing fear than ever. After that, each time I traveled, I would most likely end up in the ER from severe dehydration brought on by anxiety-induced vomiting. For years, this continued. If you were to ask me at that age, well, a few years past that, at 22, what my biggest fear was, I would have said traveling in any fashion. But if you were to ask me at age 23 what my biggest fear was, I would have had a whole different answer. You see, 23 was the best and worst year of my life. 23 was the year I became a mother, and the year I never thought possible. Growing up, I was one of those kids you see sleeping under pews because we were in church every time the doors were open. Yeah. So I was groomed on the Bible and its stories. I accepted Jesus at a really young age, but I never really knew any different. It wasn't until 23 it became real to me that I didn't know God at all. I honestly believe that if you were saved and tried to be good, that He would protect you from the things in life that are too hard to fathom. Things like poverty, sickness, and death. Whoa. I'm sorry about these pictures. I didn't look like that. But at 23, my worst fear became a reality when I found out at 30 weeks pregnant that my unborn child would require surgery immediately upon her birth to remove an intestinal blockage, likely caused by a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis. When we found this out, we were all in shock. My husband and I left that day after the doctor told us what he had saw and his suspicions. And we've lived this area all our lives, but we drove around in Pensacola and we could not find the interstate. We were just in shock. And we didn't care for about 20 minutes. We just drove around. But our family does what you do when things like this happen, and we went into prayer mode. I really believe that God would not allow this to happen to my baby. We were on every prayer list from here to California, and after 2 genetic screenings proved that both me and my husband were carriers of the recessive CF gene, our faith began to waver. Ayla was born on April 10th via C-section at 8:06 a.m. And yes, today is her 5th birthday. So I found it perfect to do this today. So I saw her face and heard her cry, and that was pretty much it. She was taken from us. I did not see her again for over 17 hours. I had to wait for my epidural to wear off and all before I could go and be with her. But she had undergone surgery and she was in intensive care. To try and explain how I felt is pretty much impossible. It felt like someone had taken my heart out of my body. To think of her lying there in pain was more than I could bear. At that point, I remember feeling the anger growing inside of me. I was so let down by God. I could not understand how this was part of His plan for my life and why Ayla had to suffer. As days passed, I became more and more obsessed with her care. I was her mom, her nurse, and her comforter, and that's really all that mattered to me. That was my first Mother's Day in the NICU with her. After 7 weeks, 2 major surgeries, and a confirmed diagnosis of CF later, we were being discharged. You're probably thinking 2 surgeries, I only heard you mention 1. Well, because Ayla's intestines were so fragile when they removed the portion that was blocked, they couldn't reconnect them at the time. They kind of wanted to let them rest. So they brought them up to the surface of her abdomen. And they were just kind of exposed there for about 5 weeks. And she was stooling into an ostomy bag and all of that. And it was just kind of normal for me. I learned how to change it and take care of it, and I was right where I wanted to be. But did you know that you can get really angry in 7 weeks? I was living my new worst nightmare, and little did I know